Handheld PCs have been around for years, but the arrival of the Steam Deck brought renewed interest and demand to the category, much like what the Nintendo Switch did for consoles back in 2017. And while the amount of engineering and tech that went into the Steam Deck is certainly impressive, Valve's mission to make a portable and affordable travel gaming PC means there's plenty of room in the handheld space for something with a bit more giddy-up. Which brings us to this. While the Ayaneo 2 doesn't deviate too much from the Steam Deck's basic formula, right from the get-go, it's also apparent that this thing isn't some cheap knockoff either. It features a big 7-inch 1920 by 1200 LCD display with strong brightness that's flanked by an Xbox-style controller layout. There are also handy buttons on each side for opening menus or functioning as shortcuts, along with some more customizable controls crammed in on top that serve as left and right mouse clicks. Even the power button has a built-in fingerprint sensor, which is a welcome bonus not available on the Steam Deck. One of the things that impresses me the most is Ayaneo's attention to detail. The whole setup feels well built. The PC's case is smooth and sturdy and has a very reassuring heft. In front, there's also a single sheet of glass that goes across the face of the system with cutouts for the joysticks and buttons, and the whole thing gives it a really slick, streamlined appearance. The company even went out of its way to ensure that there aren't any visible screws. Though if you do want to get inside, there's an included pick you can use to pry off the little covers on each side. Just be careful so you don't mess up the finish like I did. Among other premium upgrades compared to the Steam Deck, the Ayaneo 2 sports magnetic Hall sensor joysticks and shoulder triggers that feel crisp and snappy. There's basically no dead zone, unlike what you get with Valve's handheld. But my favorite thing about the Ayaneo 2's design is that its touchscreen doesn't have any bezels, which makes it almost look elegant. Finally, while I don't think either machine is truly pocketable, the Ayaneo 2 is definitely the more compact of the two. The Steam Deck measures nearly a foot across at 11.7 inches versus a much more manageable 10.4 inches for the Ayaneo 2. Another quality that elevates the Ayaneo above its rivals is a wealth of ports. Not only do you have a 3.5mm audio jack and a micro SD card slot for expandable storage, you also get 3 USB-C ports, 2 of which can be used for charging. That flexibility came in handy more often than I expected because it gave me the freedom to plug in a power cable either top or bottom, which makes it easier to keep the cord out of the way no matter how you're holding the system. On top of that, while Ayaneo makes a dock for its handhelds, because there are 3 USB-C ports along with 2 USB-A adapters in the box, you don't really need to buy one at all. Even without any additional dongles or hubs, you still have more than enough connectivity to plug in a mouse, keyboard, and an external display. So it's really easy to use this thing as a standard PC in a pinch. And if that wasn't enough, Ayaneo even includes a charging brick, a couple of international power adapters, a USB-C cable, and an extra set of screw covers in the box. The other major advantage the Ayaneo 2 holds over the Steam Deck is raw performance. While Valve worked with AMD to create a custom chip based on the company's Zen 2 architecture for the Steam Deck, the Ayaneo 2 sports a newer Ryzen 7 6800U chip built on the Zen 3 platform. That's a jump in processing power that you can really feel. In benchmarks, the Ayaneo 2 scored 4282 on 3D Mark's Wildlife Extreme test, which is comparable or slightly better than what we've seen from similarly priced laptops like the Surface Laptop 5 or the XPS 13 Plus. And when gaming, the Ayaneo 2 is between 25% to 40% faster than the Steam Deck depending on the title. In Shout of the Tomb Raider on high settings at 800p, the Ayaneo 2 averaged 54 FPS versus 40 FPS for the Steam Deck. And when I increased the game's resolution to take advantage of the Ayaneo's 2 full HD Plus screen, it still managed to pump out a playable 35 FPS at 1920 by 1200, despite pushing nearly twice as many pixels. It's a similar story in Elden Ring, where the Ayaneo 2 hovered around 55 FPS at 800p and medium settings, compared to 48 FPS for the Steam Deck, or at 40 FPS at 1200p. Okay, enough about the design and specs. What is this thing actually like to use? Well, in short, the Ayaneo 2 addresses some of my biggest complaints about the Steam Deck, but in a smaller, more compact, and better performing chassis. Its screen is way brighter, more colorful, and higher res, which makes everything look sharper. And thanks to its Ryzen 7 6800U CPU, you can get similar frame rates with the Ayaneo 2 at 1920 by 1200 versus 800p for the Steam Deck. I should also mention that while Valve's portable PC tops out with just 512 gigs of onboard storage, the Ayaneo 2 can be spec'd with up to a 2TB SSD, while still having a micro SD card slot with a neat little protective cover for extra room if you want it. The Ayaneo 2's control setup is excellent as well. That's because even without built-in touchpads like you get in the Steam Deck, you can still easily navigate Windows 11 using the left stick, which doubles as a way to move your mouse cursor. Sure, that probably means you're not going to want to play Civ 6 or an RTS on the Ayaneo 2, but even with optimized settings, those games still feel kind of clunky on the Steam Deck. Ayaneo's magnetic hall sensors in the analog sticks and shoulder triggers also deliver an incredibly responsive experience. And while I wouldn't call it a quiet system, when its fans spin up, the whir isn't nearly as loud or annoying as what I get from my Steam Deck. That said, there are still more than a few awkward aspects about the Ayaneo 2. The first is that Windows 11 is kind of annoying to use with touch controls, though simply booting into Steam's big picture mode lets you sidestep much of that. Second, while I appreciate the included iSpace app, which serves as the company's consolidated game launcher and performance monitoring tool, the user experience does feel a bit unpolished. Changing the system's resolution from the iQuick tool was often hit or miss. On top of that, when I installed an update to the iSpace app, its language setting reverted back to Chinese. That's not a huge pain to fix, but I'd much rather be playing games than diving through menus repairing something that shouldn't have changed in the first place. Then there are other little quirks like not knowing what makes the lights underneath the joysticks change colors. That's because aside from a couple quick start manuals, Ayaneo doesn't provide much in the way of documentation for the system, so you're kind of on your own when it comes to figuring out more niche features. Now I should note that the company says it's already working on a second version of the iSpace app, and in the month I've had the system, there have already been multiple patches, so it's clear the company is committed to improving the situation. Still, while the Ayaneo 2 specs are top-notch, some of its software still feels like a work in progress. Also, when compared to other handhelds, the Ayaneo 2's remote motors feel a bit one-dimensional. However, a lot of its weak points are made up for by the fact that it runs Windows, which means almost every game just kind of works. Don't get me wrong, I have a huge appreciation for what Valve is trying to do with SteamOS and for Linux gaming as a whole, but even with thousands of games that have been verified to run on the Steam Deck, there are thousands of more that aren't, and in some cases may never run right. With the Ayaneo 2, you simply have a lot more confidence that the next game you buy won't have issues when you boot it up. However, one of the few shortcomings of the Ayaneo 2 is its battery life. That's because compared to the Steam Deck, which typically lasts 2 to 4 hours on a charge, depending on the title of course, the Ayaneo 2's longevity is closer to 2 or 3. That said, you can adjust the power draw of the system if you want to improve energy efficiency, but in the end, this is sort of the price you pay for increased performance. Now as I look back, I still think the Steam Deck was one of the most important gadgets of 2022. Putting premium laptop specs with great controls and surprisingly good battery life in a handheld PC that starts at just $400 is an unbeatable deal. But for people who want something a bit more premium, the Ayaneo 2 has a lot to like. It's got a cleaner, more compact design with a way better screen. Its joysticks and buttons also feel tighter and more luxurious. And on the inside, it's got a significantly more powerful chip that not only delivers solid performance at FHD+, the decision to go with Windows instead of SteamOS also means much wider game compatibility. Unfortunately, with the cheapest version of the Ayaneo 2 starting at around $850, you're also paying a premium for all those fancy upgrades. But if you're like me and you've been searching for something that is essentially a Steam Deck Pro, the Ayaneo 2 is it. But what do you think? Do you like the higher performance and fancier components on the Ayaneo 2? Or do you prefer something a bit more affordable like the Steam Deck? Or are you still waiting for yet another wave of upcoming portable PCs from Ayaneo, which they just announced a couple weeks ago? Let us know down in the comments below, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to Engadget for more news, reviews, and hands-ons.